Community Health on the phone with us today. So hopefully we're able to answer some of the questions that you may have about cost report preparation for hospital-based cost reports. And at this time, I'm going to go ahead and start the presentation. All right. So, like I said, we're going to be discussing how to properly prepare and submit the hospital-based cost report today. But first, I just wanted to get started with a little bit of background on who we are as Myers and Stauffer. Some of y'all may not have had any experience with us, but we are a CPA firm who was founded in 1977 by professors from Kansas. We have over 40 years of experience, and we specialize in government healthcare programs. We currently partner with everyone from the federal government to state government to local agencies, providing a range of different services, everything from consulting and litigation support to doing rate setting and compliance reviews and post-payment examinations. Currently, we have over 19 offices across the nation and around 900 team members. Our Atlanta office was opened in 2008 and currently has over 70 employees. And for fiscal year 2021, this will be our 5th year doing the skilled nursing facility reviews and examinations on behalf of the Department of Community Health. I think hopefully by now we've had interactions with all of you, but if not, that's kind of a quick background on who we are. If you'd like more information or additional ways to contact us, there's a link on the left side of this slide that you can click, and it will take you to our website, and all of our leadership is on there, and you should be able to find our office phone number or our emails on that website. Today, we're going to be discussing, like I said, the Medicaid nursing facility hospital-based cost report. The nursing homes are required to submit a cost report every year. Hospital-based are a little bit different than freestanding in that they're allowed to use a year-end other than June 30th. That year-end will coincide with the year-end that's used on your Medicare cost report. And also, you know, they just look a little bit different than freestanding cost reports. There's a few additional schedules on there, but ultimately the goal is still the same. We're trying to ensure that all of the costs are classified into the various cost centers on Schedule B2 and make sure that things are classified correctly because those cost centers are reimbursed at different rates. So before we get started, I just kind of wanted to take a couple minutes to kind of give everyone just a few resources that you can use and some additional information. The first thing that we're going to go or take a look at is provider manuals. The provider manuals are available on the Department of Community Health's website. Again, there's a link on this slide that you should be able to click and access. There's really 3 policy manuals that we use when we're doing these reviews. The first one is Part 1, Policies and Procedures for Medicaid and Peach Care for Kids. This manual is it's really the general requirements for all Medicaid providers in the state of Georgia. It kind of lists the requirements for enrolling and to remain eligible in the program. It's also important because in Chapter 500, it outlines the provider's appeal right and the procedures for filing appeal if you disagree with any of the reviews or examinations that we've done, and the rates are set. Part 1, Policies and Procedures, is where you're going to find your appeal rights and how to go about that process. Each category of service has its own specific policy manual. We refer to that as Part 2. For skilled nursing facilities, it's the Nursing Facility Services Policy Manual, and this is the policy manual that really digs into the specifics of skilled nursing facilities. It has a lot of great examples in there and kind of different situations that you may run across and how to categorize things or classify things. It's updated yearly, so if it's been a little while since you downloaded one, I'd recommend that you go out and download the most recent one. There's also the Uniform Chart of Accounts manual. And this manual details the chart of accounts that are used on the Medicaid cost reports. And again, it also has some really good specific examples of situations that you may encounter when you're preparing the cost report and when you're getting ready to submit the cost report. So it's just a really good resource to have available to be able to reference if you run into something that you're unsure on. It kind of gives some details on specific items and where they go, which cost center that they would be classified in. And again, it's just a really great resource that's available to us. New for fiscal year 2021 is a checklist that's going to be required for all of the cost report preparers and to be submitted with the cost report for fiscal year 2021. You should complete this checklist as you're preparing the cost report, and it will be submitted as an attachment to the cost report. A lot of the information that's on here we'll go over in more detail today, but it just kind of lists each schedule on there, gives you a description of the schedule, and then has a few helpful hints to be, for the cost report preparer to make sure that they're doing it correctly and that everything is completed accurately. And finally, there's the cost report instructions. In addition to the P&P manuals, there's a 10-page document that's available for cost report preparers and the providers that provides further guidance for each of the schedules on the cost report. And again, it also gives some very specific examples of things that you may encounter when completing the cost report. It's available on DCH's website as well, and I believe is on the same page as where you download the cost report template. So again, that's another great resource that we have. All right, so now we're going to start walking through the hospital-based cost report and just take you through schedule by schedule and kind of explain the purpose of each schedule and how it should be completed. If you have any questions as we're going through this, we'll hold those until the end, and we'll have a time available for everyone to ask questions and to set a few minutes aside where we can answer those for you. So just kind of make notes as we're going through, and we'll set a few minutes aside at the end to answer any questions that you may have. The first one is page 1 of the cost report. It's fairly self-explanatory. Just a few things to kind of note on here is when you fill out your Medicaid provider ID in box 1, it should automatically update box 2 for you. And then you can fill out the rest of the information, the mailing address, legal name of the facility, county, things like that. One thing to note is in boxes 10 and 11, where it says facility email address and contact name. Those should be the names of the people that you may want us to contact while we're doing a review or an examination. I know sometimes, you may put the administrator's name there or the CFO's name on there, but they may not be the actual point of contact and may not have the information that we need. So we're asking that for box 10 and 11, if you'll put the, if you have a reimbursement department and you want us to contact the reimbursement manager, if you'll put email address, contact name there, that is generally where we start when we have questions regarding the cost report or during our desk review and field examination. We start there. So list the name of the individual that you want us to reach out to. Also, in boxes 17, if you've had a change of ownership during the year, be sure to fill out those 3 boxes. Indicate the number of months that were operated, that there was a change in ownership, and then indicate whether that is the first or the second owner's cost report that's being submitted. Also, if you have had a change of ownership or if you've had a change of name or a change in the number of beds that you're certified for, please submit a copy of the most recent nursing home license to kind of validate that information, whether it's name or beds or a change of ownership. Just submit a copy of the most recent nursing home license as an attachment to the cost report. And finally, at the bottom in box 18, just be sure to select what kind of ownership you have and nonprofit status. I know sometimes it's easy to get overlooked, but if you're a hospital that's owned by the city or county and nonprofit, just be sure to check those two boxes so that we have that document. And then lastly, it's just kind of the bottom of page 1. Just be sure on boxes 1 and 2 to fill out the number of beds that you're certified for the nursing facility, and then the number of beds in 21 that you may share with any other service provider. We're not going to cover page 2 or the certification page because those are fairly straightforward. Page 2 is just an index of all of the schedules of the cost report, and the certification page is just a page for you to be able to update, or certify that all of the information included in the cost report is correct to the best of your knowledge. So we're just going to skip forward to the check figures page. The check figures page is probably one of the, even though we're going in the order that they appear on the cost report, and it appears very early, this is probably going to be one of the schedules that you want to come back to after you've completed everything and just make sure that everything looks good. It's kind of a way for you to be able to verify that numbers are flowing correctly across the different schedules, and takes a look at a few key components that we take a look at and just make sure that everything matches across the schedules. There may be some instances where you have a legitimate variance between those lines, and if so, we ask that you take a few moments and fill out an explanation for why those don't tie in the blue boxes provided for you. All right, so for Schedule A is where we report the census days, and that's the monthly census totals that are included in Part 1. Those numbers should tie to the actual detailed census reports that you're using. And we ask that if you're, it's a good habit to get into. If you're printing off census reports to generate the cost report, keep a copy of those. If you're selected for a field examination, we're going to request them. It's going to be part of our standard request. So just kind of get into the habit of saving those along with some of your other cost report materials. And it may save you a little bit of time down the road if you are selected for a field examination. One thing to note on this schedule is that column 7, which is the on-site Medicaid days, and, that's your total on-site days, and column 4 is the Medicaid on-site days, are used in the Schedule B1A calculations. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in just a few minutes. But it is important to make sure that those are entered accurately because they do determine some of your allowable costs on the cost report. And then also report the number of certified beds that you have in Part 2. And again, those should tie to the nursing home license and the hospital license. This brings us to Schedule B. Schedule B is the statement of operations. It's kind of the summary of Schedules B1, B2, and B3. It's an overview of your revenues and expenses for the year. Column 2 references the actual schedules and lines that these numbers are pulled from. And then column 3 summarizes all of the amounts that should be on the nursing homes, general ledgers, or allocated down through the cost report, through Schedule A, Schedule B to the facility. These are what we refer to as the direct costs. Column 4 is your as adjusted figures. This is going to be the reimbursable or allowable amount, and will include all of the B4 adjustments and B8 adjustments that are made. And then lastly, the last section, B3, just covers those non-operating revenues and expenses that are listed on Schedule B3.
Hey, Cliff, can you speak up a little bit? A couple folks are having trouble hearing you.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll pull the phone a little bit closer to you. Is that better?
Sounds good to me.
Okay. All right. So the next tab is the mapping tab. And this provides an area for the providers to submit and attach their mapping reports or their grouping and crosswalk reports. You don't have to include it in the cost report if your accounting software is sophisticated enough that it can generate a crosswalk or a grouping report for you, and you just want to submit that as an attachment to the cost report. That's fine. But we should have that information somewhere. It should, either be in the mapping tab or included as an attachment to the cost report. So it's completely up to you whether you want to complete it inside of the cost report, or, like I said, if your accounting software generates a report for you and you just want to attach that, that's fine too. But it should be specific enough to list out the general ledger account numbers, the general ledger account names, and then where that goes to and where that gets grouped onto the cost report, what line of the cost report it's getting recorded on. From there, we'll go to Schedule B1. Schedule B1 is supporting schedule to Schedule B. It kind of gives us a much more in-depth look at the revenues for the year. Lines 1 through 7 are your routine revenues. It's pretty self-explanatory. Lines 8 through 21 are the lines that are going to feed into the Schedule B1A calculations. And so we break those down by the actual payer types, by Medicaid, Medicare, and then private and other. It's important to note with that, with Medicaid, for the purposes of the cost report, this is strictly those residents who have already been approved for Medicaid. I know sometimes a lot of providers will have a payer type that's Medicaid pending or Medicaid hospice. Medicaid hospice is reimbursed through a different program, and so would get classified as private in this instance because it's not being reimbursed through the skilled nursing facility and long-term care project or contract. And then also, same thing for Medicaid pending. Until those residents are actually approved, we record those as private charges. It doesn't always get approved on the date of admission, and though sometimes it is retroactively applied, it may not go all the way back to the admission to the date of admission in the nursing facility. So until they're actually approved and we have that firm date, any Medicaid pending person we record as private on the schedule and in the revenue journals as well as the census information. All right, so this brings us to Schedule B1A. This is one of the more complicated schedules on the cost report. And again, although we're doing this in the order that it appears on the cost report, this is actually one of the last schedules that you'll want to circle back to and kind of complete at the end of your preparation. If you'll notice in the top left-hand corner, the button that you press to recalculate says to press this only after you've completed all of the additional schedules. But we'll go ahead and kind of walk through it and talk a little bit about it. Obviously, the top of the schedule lists the different ancillary services that are provided. And then at the bottom, you'll see line 10, which is the allowable cost. The allowable cost is what's reimbursable. It's the maximum allowable cost that's calculated by Schedule A or Schedule B1A. And then the remaining cost on line 12 is going to be your adjustment to the cost. And again, you have to push, in order for this to actually flow through into Schedule B4 and on to B2, you must click that recalculate button, but only press it after you've completed all of the other schedules. I believe if you press it beforehand, there may be a little warning that comes up underneath it in red that tells you that it needs to be ran again, that some of the figures aren't tying correctly. So again, just make sure this is towards the end of your cost report preparation. Click that recalculate button, and it'll kind of calculate these adjustments for you. But I did kind of want to spend a little bit of time and just explain what this schedule does for you. So what the schedule is doing is kind of calculating those costs that are attributable to your Medicaid population in your nursing facility. Obviously, the amounts on lines 1, 2, and 4 are brought in through Schedule B2 and B4 and through Schedule B1 on your total charges. And it calculates a cost to charge ratio on line 5 for you. And then what it's going to do is take the Medicaid charges on line 6 that were entered on Schedule B1, multiply it by that cost to charge ratio to estimate a Medicaid cost on line 7. From there, it's going to take a look at the Medicaid utilization and take a look at the total days versus the Medicaid days to come up with the utilization factor that gets applied to that Medicaid cost, and then determines on line 10 the maximum reimbursable costs. And that is what's used to kind of drive and calculate those adjustments. If your maximum reimbursable cost is more than your total cost, then it'll make the adjustment to remove those as necessary. And again, I don't want to sound like I'm kind of harping on this too much, but it is really important. In that top left corner, the recalculate button, it should be one of the last things that you do. And again, line 6 is your Medicaid charges. We talked about this a little bit earlier, but those should include only those who have actually been approved for Medicaid coverage. And that should be the only charges that are listed on line 6. It shouldn't include your Medicaid pending or Medicaid hospice charges. Again, those should all be recorded in the private cost center or the private bucket for revenue. So for Schedule B2, obviously this is the largest part of our cost report, and we're just going to kind of run through a few things here. There's a couple slides on it, but we'll go through it pretty quick. The layout of it, column 2 is your per facility books. These are the costs that should tie to the nursing home's general ledger and are directly incurred by the nursing home. Column 3 ties to Medicare cost report worksheet A6. And column 4 should tie to Medicare cost report worksheet A8. Collectively, those 3 columns are referred to as the direct costs. When we are doing our field examinations, those are the costs that we're really digging into and taking a look at. So those 3 combined, your facilities general ledgers, the costs that are adjusted or reclassified from the hospital to the nursing home on A6, and then any adjustments made to those costs on A8 are really what we're focusing in on, and those again are called the direct costs. Column 5 should tie to worksheet B, part 1. For the majority of the providers and majority of the hospitals, those are going to be the amounts that are reported on line 44 of the Medicare cost report, the skilled nursing facility. I know there are some providers who report it on different lines or may have multiple skilled nursing facilities reported, but generally those are going to be the amounts reported on line 44. Column 7 should be able to reconcile to worksheet B, part 2. And it's important to note that these amounts should be entered as negatives, and then there's an entry down in the property and related section that will sum up all of those amounts and put it in property and related. So essentially what we're trying to do with this is identify those capital and property costs, remove them from the individual cost centers, and then place them in property and related where they belong on the on the Medicaid cost report. Column 9 is the Schedule B4 adjustment, and then column 10 should tie back to Schedule B8. So again, just a few things to note as we're walking through this. Routine and special services are combined for rate setting purpose. So for this, we're taking a look at these 2, but all of those get combined. Schedule B1A, those are reported on lines 10A through 10J, I believe. And those are everything that gets run through Schedule B1A, and the remaining special services are listed on lines 7 through 10. And again, these costs should include all of the expenses. For example, on row 1, nursing facility, it's going to include all of your salaries, benefits, supplies, any contracted services, and it should all be listed on there. I know for those of you who do multiple ones, the freestanding one separates that out into individual sub-accounts, but the hospital-based cost report, it all gets grouped together on that single line. And it's important that those expenses should be recorded in the cost center in which they're incurred. So for example, if you have obviously direct nursing salaries, that should go on the nursing facility. But then if you have dietary aides that work only in the nursing home, those should be reported in the dietary section and not get clumped together with all of the other, routine salaries or whatever. So make sure that you're kind of breaking those out and recording those in the correct cost centers. Dietary expenses are on lines 12 through 14. And I made a note here to kind of point out that there is the tube feeding account, which is run through Schedule B1A. It's the only B1A schedule or B1A account that is not in special services. It's in the dietary cost center, so if you have some adjustments on tube feeding on Schedule B1A, those should populate for you over in Schedule 9 after you click that button in the upper left-hand corner of Schedule B1A. Again, laundry and housekeeping and operation and maintenance is combined for rate setting purposes. So all of those, as far as rates are determined or concerned, get grouped together and are reimbursed under the same rate. Just to kind of point out here, some of these amounts are calculated for you, but on lines 19A, those are the adjustments that are coming for the therapy room overhead for laundry and housekeeping, and those shouldn't reconcile to Schedule B1A. And then on line 19B, those are any adjustments that are coming from Schedule B5 for those non-patient care areas in the nursing home. And the same thing on operations and maintenance. 23A should tie to B1A, and 23B should tie to B5. All right, and so now we get down towards the bottom of Schedule B2, and we're taking a look at the administrative and general expenses. It's important to note that the provider fee is excluded from A and G expenses when calculating the rate for this cost center. For the current fiscal years, the general and professional liability amount is also carved out from that for rate setting purposes. So just kind of know, that those rates, those amounts will get kind of reported separately. It's why there's a separate line for the provider fee for you to report that there, and why we ask for you to submit the general and professional liability supplemental form is so that we can take those into consideration when we're calculating the cap for the administrative and general cost center. Also note that nurse aid testing and training has its own line to report costs here. Nurse aid testing and training, if you have a program that is running, those costs should be recorded obviously in columns 2. And then you should have a Schedule B4 adjustment that's going to zero out that account. And you should always have a zero balance for nurse aid testing and training in column 11. And then what you'll do is detail out those amounts in this detail box at the bottom of schedule, or there at the bottom of the administrative and general section. Those expenses are reimbursed on a dollar-for-dollar basis. And they don't get included in the general A and G account, but they should be removed from the cost report and reported in that detail box, in that little breakout box there. And that's what we use to review the nurse aid testing and training expenses. So make sure that you're doing that correctly. Again, column 11 for the nurse aid testing and training should always be zero, and then you should have those costs broken out below in the detail box. And that brings us to the property and related and taxes and insurance section. Just like nurse aid testing and training, there's a detail box for you to break that out, for you to break out these costs beneath the property and related section. And that's really important for the hospital-based providers, especially since everything gets kind of grouped together there, and depreciation and property costs. That's what we use to kind of determine those property expenses that are reimbursed under the FRV program, and then the taxes and insurance, which are reimbursed on a dollar-per-dollar basis. So, just make sure that when you complete this, that you detail it out correctly in the detail box, because that's what we're using to kind of look at those figures and make sure that everything is correct and that it's being reimbursed correctly. Again, your depreciation or capitalized assets are going to go to P&R, and then any property taxes or property insurance will be reimbursed through the or taxes and insurance section, which again is dollar per dollar. And then one final thing to note on this, and this is a big one, it's one of the first things that we look at. If you notice on line 40 where it says grand total, column 6, which is the total nursing facility amount, should reconcile to Medicare Worksheet B, Part 1, the SNF line, and again, that's usually line 44. If those amounts do not match, the cost report will not be accepted, and we'll ask you to refile the cost report. Those have to match, and it shows that the Medicare cost report and the Medicaid cost reports are using the same figures. And if there's any sort of discrepancy there, we'll reach out to you and the Department of Community Health and ask for you to refile the cost report. All right, so Schedule B3. Schedule B3 details out the other operating revenues and expenses. For the other revenues that are listed here, if there's any associated expense with those, or if you have any expense like a vending machine or a canteen or a gift shop that's generating revenue, then that expense should be offset. And the easiest way to think of it is, I always refer to Medicaid as being the payer of last resort. So if you can bill Medicare for it, you should bill Medicare for it. If there's a private payer or someone else paying for it, they should pay for it. And only those expenses, which aren't reimbursed under Medicare or private insurance, should be left here. So on this one, just make sure if you are making those revenue offsets that you indicate whether or not you're making those on worksheet A8 in that column on the right-hand side of this schedule. Otherwise, if you need to make a revenue offset, you can make that on Schedule B4. As we kind of move down, you'll see there's another section here for non-operating revenues. And then there's a few of these boxes here at the bottom. There's one for the section above as well, where it asks you to detail out the amounts that are listed in those other non-operating revenues and accounts 499 and 498. Just understand that while we're reviewing this, miscellaneous or various or prior year isn't a sufficient enough description. We need that description to really be descriptive enough so that we're able to ascertain what the actual source of that revenue is. If it is prior year revenue, maybe you got a refund for property insurance or some other type of insurance, put that in there. You can put prior year property insurance refund. If it's a rebate of some kind, you can list out what kind of a rebate it is. But as I'm sure most of you are probably aware, if it says miscellaneous or various, and we can't ascertain what the source of that is, we are going to reach out to you during the course of the desk review and ask for some additional documentation to be able to determine whether or not that revenue requires an offset. For Schedule B3, the Part 2 of it is your other non-operating expenses. And this section is just an opportunity for you to list out any expenses that you may have in your general ledger that aren't included in the cost report. And I know some providers will have a non-allowable account well, they'll stick like penalties and late fees and stuff in it. And it's just an opportunity for you to list this here so that your trial balances match and you can kind of trace everything back and forth between the cost report and your general ledger. All right, so Schedule B4, column 1 allows for the nursing home and for y'all, for the providers, to kind of indicate why they're making adjustments. If you indicate basis A, it lets us know that you're making it on the basis of expenses. So you're taking a look at your general ledger and saying, okay, I know this expense, is not allowable or needs to be reduced to related party costs, and so I want to make an adjustment there. That would be basis A. Basis B indicates that it was made on the basis of revenue. So like we were talking about on Schedule B3, if you do have a vending machine that the nursing facility is responsible for stocking and they incur the expense for stocking that, and then you're going to offset $900 of revenue that you made from the vending machines, that would be under basis B, and then you put the amount as $900. It also gives you the opportunity to tell us what lines those are affecting on column 3, and then to enter any sort of clarifying comments that you may have in column 4. And again, that can be, everything. It can be like if there's a certain account that you're removing, you can say remove the account, whatever. Or if you're just marking something down to a related party expense, like on line 22 where it's rent, and you're removing or marking rent down to the related party expense, you can put that in there as adjusted to related party costs. And that brings us down to these lines in the middle. And this is why I was saying it was important for you to click that button last, is once you click that button, it's going to go ahead and populate lines 41 to 51 for you, which are your ancillary adjustments. And then line 56 through 58 should go ahead and flow in as well from Schedule B5. So for Schedule B5, we'll just kind of run through this real quickly, and there's a few important things to kind of point out. Column 1 is used for square footage of the nursing facility. The percentages will automatically calculate for you, but while we're discussing this, I did want to go ahead and point out the note that's in red at the bottom of this schedule. The square footage of the nursing facility should include those areas, or should only include those areas that are fully enclosed, heated or cooled, constructed of a similar material as the nursing facility, and then located on the same campus as the nursing facility. So, if you have like a screened-in porch or whatever for the residents to go out on and sit on during the afternoons or evenings, that's not fully enclosed, so it wouldn't be included as part of the total square footage of the facility. Same thing with the maintenance sheds. If the building is a masonry block building and the maintenance shed is just one of the, like a little portable building, or one of the like 10 sheds that you can buy and is set behind the nursing facility for the maintenance man to have his own shop and be able to have his own space to store tools and different equipment that he may need. That's not similar construction, so that wouldn't be considered part of the nursing facility either. You also have the option in column 1A to report laundry or laundry expense by poundage. So if your hospital tracks laundry by pounds, then you can click that checkbox for laundry that says use pounds, and then you would enter the pounds of laundry in column 1A. Columns 2 through 5, again, it's kind of calculating. Those are calculated figures. It's going to calculate the indirect costs associated with those areas by using the amounts that are reported on Schedule B2. And again, any non-patient care area should be listed there on lines 5 through 11. So if you have a vent unit, you would list it there. If you have a beauty and barber shop that is only used and leased to a beautician and not open to the family or residential use, you would list that there, and it's going to calculate those adjustments, those overhead adjustments for you on line 12. The therapy room is listed on line 12A, and the overhead adjustments for it are going to flow back to Schedule B1A and be made from Schedule B1A. For Schedule B6, this should include any of the contracts that are included in those direct costs from the skilled nursing facility. So the amounts that are included in schedule, included in the nursing home's general ledger, or that have been reclassified to the provider through an A6 adjustment. Any contractors or vendors that are specifically being utilized by the nursing home and not being allocated down through the hospital and Medicare cost report should be reported on Schedule B6. Again, this is one of those things where if it's not included, we are going to be reaching out to you during the desk review or examination to ask for additional documentation, and that Schedule B6 be completed and resubmitted to us. So again, just remember, similar to Schedule B3, various or miscellaneous isn't an adequate description. If it's a contract of more than $1,200 or $100 a month, just list out the vendor name, the type of service they're providing. If they're a Medicaid provider, you can list their provider number in column A or column 5. Give us a brief description of the actual type of services that are being provided. And then in column 7, enter the amount for that. In column 8, tell us what cost center or what line on Schedule B2 it's actually affecting and being recorded in. Schedule B7 is the ventilator or the vent unit cost summary. I'm not sure if any hospitals are currently operating vent units for their skilled nursing facility, but if so, this is where you would record all of the direct costs associated with that. You'd record your patient days for the vent units here. It's just where you record all of the information related to your vent unit here. I know it's reimbursed at a slightly different rate than your general nursing home per diem, and so it's just making sure that those costs are not included in the costs that are reimbursed on Schedule B2, since they are reimbursed at a different per diem and under a different program. We just want to make sure that they're not included in our allowable costs on Schedule B2. And this is where you would report those costs. Schedule B8, this one we're going to take a few minutes to kind of walk through because this is, again, one of the more tricky schedules on the cost report. This calculates the impact made by the Medicare intermediary and when they're doing their reviews and their examinations. So, you may have multiple cost reports or Medicare cost reports that are finalized during the year. If so, you can click that button in the upper left-hand corner. And what you're going to see is a pop-up like this that's going to ask you for the number of final settled cost reports that you've received during the year. You'll select whether it's 2 or 3 or 4 and click Submit. And you'll notice that once you click Submit, it will unhide some additional B8 schedules for you. So you'll see down there at the bottom a little screenshot of the bottom of the cost report, and you'll see B8, prior year 1, prior year 2, prior year 3, and then a summary. Once you've selected the correct amount or the correct number of settled cost reports and hit Submit, click Done, and that pop-up will disappear. So for Schedule B8, you're actually going to have to use several different cost reports to be able to complete this. First, you're going to take a look at column 2, and column 2 comes from the final settled Medicaid cost or Medicare cost report. And if you see in the top screenshot that we have, where it says contractor use only number 5, It indicates number 2, which is settled without an audit. So we want to make sure that we're using the cost report that's either a number 2 or a number 3, so one of the final settled cost reports, and then make sure that we're using the correct time period. So for this one, we're taking a look at a cost report that was from fiscal year 2016. So the Medicare cost report should also be from 2016. And then we're going to take a look at that at Schedule B1, or sorry, Worksheet B Part 1, and pull in $150,000 from maintenance and repairs onto column 2. Column 3 is going to come from Worksheet B Part 2. And remember that we enter these amounts as negatives, and then they get reclassified into property and related further down the schedule. So we'll enter a negative 500 there, which will give us a final settled cost report expense of $149,500. Next, we're going to take a look at the Medicaid cost report from that cost report period. So now we have the actual Medicaid cost report from fiscal year 2016. You can see that the Medicare cost allocation on column 4 from 2016 was $148,000, and then the new capital costs were negative $485. So that would give us that depreciation expense, or the Medicare cost report amount net of capital costs would be $147,515. And you see it gives us and calculates a difference of $1,985, and that amount will flow back to Schedule B2 and populate your adjustment there in column 10 for the Schedule B8 adjustment. So just make sure that you're using this, that you're using the final settled cost report from the fiscal year that was actually audited and settled, and then the actual Medicaid cost report from that same period. And then be sure that you submit that information with the cost report as an attachment. It'll kind of limit us from having to reach out to you and request it. So any final settled cost reports, and then the original Medicaid cost reports as well, you can submit those with your current year cost report. Schedule G details out the nursing hours by positions and breaks them down between employee hours and contract hours. It also lists at the bottom all of the benefits that are provided to your employees, and you can just list those there and kind of break those down by cost centers. Brings us to Schedule G1. Schedule G1 is where we report all of our highly compensated employees as well as any related employees. So it should list all of the employees earning more than $26.30 an hour, or roughly $54,700 a year. It must include all of the employees listed in white, even if their compensation is below that amount. So if you have an activities director that doesn't make that amount, still list them here. Give us the information as to what cost center they're being recorded in, and then the number of hours and compensation that they were paid, and any benefits related to them. Again, just make sure that this is filled out, especially the cost center. Again, I know I mentioned it a little bit earlier, but the salaries should be recorded in the actual cost centers that they're earned in. So your activities director, would be in special services, but then your marketing director and staff development coordinator, things like that, should all be in A and G. If you have anyone that performs marketing duties, such as a marketing director or an admissions coordinator that may do some marketing, you can indicate the amount of time spent doing those marketing activities on column 9, and then that should kind of also help you determine the amount of an adjustment that's going to be made, that's going to be needed to remove those marketing salaries and benefits on Schedule B4. So if you have you have an admissions director who spends 1 day a week doing marketing, you would remove 20% of her salary and benefits, or their salary and benefits, as marketing related on Schedule B4, and you would list over here in column 9, 20%. All right, the other one to note is a supply clerk. So if you have a supply clerks belong in A and G for the amount of time that they're actually spent doing that supply clerk job duty. I know sometimes the supply clerk may split their time between a couple different job duties, but anyone, any of the time spent actually doing inventory or ordering supplies and things like that, all of that time and expense should be classified to the A&G cost center. And the same thing, I mentioned kind of splitting between cost centers. If you have an employee who splits their time between the hospital and the SNF, you can do that here as well by indicating in column 9 the amount of time that they spend in the hospital versus at the nursing facility. And be sure that you keep those time studies for them, or whatever documentation that you're using to kind of calculate those percentages of time for non-allowable duties. Because if you are selected for a field examination, we will request that information, or we'll interview some of the staff there to kind of determine if that was an accurate representation of the actual amount of time spent. Schedule H, Part 1, is where you list all of the related parties. And Part 2 is where you list the ownership of the facility. Again, 100% of the ownership should be indicated, even if it's, if you're owned or governed by a county board or a health authority, just make sure that you list that here and indicate that it's 100% owned by, the county or health authority. For Part 3, you're going to list out, again, any related parties, and any administrators as well, and also anyone receiving director's fees. So you should, on this one, should always have at least your administrators listed, anyone who received director's fees, and then if you have anyone who is a related party, who's related to the owners or the administrators, you would list them here as well. So for the questionnaire, just note on column in general question 6, if you didn't have any final settled cost reports, or if you have some that are still open that haven't been settled, list those there. And be sure that anything that you're answering no for, that you kind of provide an explanation of why you answered no for that in the space provided for you. We'll look at it a little bit later, but it's below question 16. So for the insurance, we ask what kind of coverage that you have that is self-insured or through captive insurance. Be sure to kind of explain that there, whether, if you have self-insurance for group health and then captive insurance for general and professional liability, just kind of indicate that there and indicate what policies are being covered under the different types of insurance. If you're leasing the facility, go ahead and enter the beginning and ending date of the lease and the amount of the lease. And then for question 12 and for question 12, which is dues, again, this is kind of similar to what we mentioned before on B6 and B3. Please don't list various or miscellaneous. We will reach out to you and ask for additional documentation if you do. So for your dues and subscriptions, actually enter the amount or enter the vendor name and then the amount that you're paying and the purpose for those dues. For property taxes, if you enter yes, that property taxes are directly expensed by the nursing home, then please kind of indicate those property taxes on the lines provided below, or you can attach, if you have a prepaid analysis work paper that kind of breaks down the property taxes expensed by the nursing home or the insurance expensed by the nursing home, you can submit that as an attachment to the cost report. It's just if you are directly expensing those property taxes, please include the information for us. Yep. All right. So that brings us to the end of the questionnaire. For fiscal year 2021, we have incorporated the general and professional liability information into the bottom of the questionnaire. So instead of filing that supplemental report, it's all listed at the bottom of the questionnaire now. Just remember that this information, especially coming from the hospital, should be able to be easily reconciled to the amount reported on worksheet S2 of the Medicare cost report, and then should also list any amount for insurance that are directly expensed to the nursing facility as well. And again, all of your documentation regarding GL and or general and professional liability expenses or policies should be submitted as an attachment to the cost report as well. And here you kind of see at the bottom, any question that you answered no to, just give us a little bit of additional information on it and why you answered no to that question there at the bottom of the questionnaire. So with that, that brings us to the end. Did anyone have any questions or anything that they would like further clarification on?
This is Jesus Ruiz. I have 5 questions.
All right.
Okay, the first.
We'll take them one at a time. So.
Okay. On page 1, number 16, I have a cost report that the Medicare cost report ends in a different date, does not end on June 30th. Do I put the end of the cost report per the Medicare cost report, or do I put 6/30?
Yeah, you would put the date of the Medicare cost report on that. So if it ended, if the Medicare cost report ends April 30th, you'd put April 30th on box 16.
Okay. On B3, is that for the nursing home only, or does that include what we offset for the Medicare cost report? So in other words, I don't have any non-operating revenues that are being offset directly to the nursing home. They're all being offset to the hospital. Do I exclude them?
Yeah, that would be only the amount for the nursing home should be related or should be recorded on Schedule B3. So, if there is a gift shop and it's operated by the hospital, you don't have to report that there. This is just those revenues that are being directly incurred and reported by the nursing facility.
Okay, thank you. On B6, when I did this, and I list all my vendors, it does not tie to my general ledger account for contract labor because I have accruals. Do you want me to list the accruals or just leave it blank and just let it be so that it doesn't reconcile?
Your amounts reported should include the accruals for the expense, right? Or
it's just a general accrual, and that's what they wrote down on the GL. When I look at the GL detail, it just says accruals. So I can see where my detail all ends up tying to it, but I don't tie at the bottom because of those accrual entries.
In that instance, you know, we have, I mean, it's not always going to tie directly, you know, because there are some times where you'll have amounts less than $1,200 a year or $100. If it's a significant accrual, I would say list it on Schedule B6 so that we're aware of it. But if it falls beneath that $100 a month threshold, I think that would be fine just to kind of show it there. We're really trying to just ascertain the expense incurred by the provider for the services rendered by that vendor.
Okay, thank you. And on G1, this is only for nursing home personnel, correct? For what's on my line 44 of the cost report, as far as listing the personnel that are there.
Correct. Anyone who works in the nursing home or splits their time between the nursing home and hospital. So, you know, if you have a director of nursing who, I know, you know, may spend 75% of their time at the hospital, 25% of their time at the nursing facility, if their salaries are included in the per books amount on Schedule B2, then they should be listed on Schedule B1, or sorry, G1.
So pretty much it's anybody that is on the cost report line 44, I would say column, you know, the after adjustment column, if their salary is there and not being stepped down, I need to include them here.
Yep, correct. If their salaries are not being stepped down, they should be included there.
All right. And the last one, I did not prepare the cost report, and my numbers on the insurance are different than what the person that prepared the cost report put on S2. Can I use the correct numbers and have an explanation of why there is a variance between S2 line 128 and the P&L and the insurance?
Yeah, include like you said, include some supplemental information to reconcile it and the correct information, and then a brief explanation of why there was that variance between the two of them.
Okay, thank you. And I have one last question. On B8, the comparison, I just took over for from another preparer, and the open cost reports go back to 2016, and we don't have, the facility doesn't have the nursing home cost report that was prepared, or was that submitted? Is that something that I can get from the department for comparison purposes?
Yes, you can send me an email requesting the cost report.
Okay, then that's it. I appreciate all your help. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Jesus. Any other questions or anything else I would like to discuss?
Is there a copy of your PowerPoint presentation that we could download to reference to?
Yes, ma'am. I believe it should be, I think the department is going to upload it to their website for you to download. But if not, or if you have trouble finding it, you can reach out to us here at the office. I can give you our office number if you want, and you can call and talk to myself or Jeff or Clint, and we can email you a copy as well. But it should be out on their, like I said, I think they're putting it on their website for everyone to be able to reference and download.
That's correct. We will post it. So look for it in a couple of days. I'm not sure what all else the DCH webmaster may have going on, but in the next couple of days, it should be posted.
Okay, any other questions? All right. Well, everyone, thank you for your time, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your Monday. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. You can find our contact information on our website at mslc.com. And again, thank you all for your time.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Myers and Soffer.
Have a good day.